Hey guys, and welcome back. We are still on page 35, which is the basic percent module, but we left off with this table, and I want to go ahead and have you to fill this in with me. So starting with the header row, let's see what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to get a fraction form, which I've given you, a percent form, a decimal form, and a word form. So the first thing I'm going to fill in on each one of these is the word form. And the way that you would read this fraction is 3/4. But I'm going to do the word form with the decimal version. So these two will go together because I think you probably would know that that's 3/4, but I'm not sure you'll know how to write it as a decimal. So we will do the word form based on our decimal. So let's start with 3/4, and I'm going to do my work right here. And the first thing, and again, you can do this on your calculator, but I think it's important to remember how to do long division. This is on employment tests sometimes, so it's certainly not going to hurt to review. But you can do it however you want to. You're grown-ups. I'm not grading this. You do it the way you want. Okay, to do this first 3/4, I want to take the bottom number, the 4, and divide it into the top number. So the 4 goes on the outside. And I ask myself, can 4 go into 3? And the answer is no. So I add a decimal and I add a 0. 4 can go into 30. It goes 7 times, and 7 times 4 is 28. 28, 29, 30, that's a difference of 2. And then you want to add your 0. Keep it lined up. That's so important with long division. You have to keep it straight. And go ahead and draw those arrows, and that'll help do that. 4 into 20 goes 5 times, and 5 times 4 is 20. And when you get no remainder, you're done, okay? So I like to put 2 lines to show that that cannot go any further. It was an even division. So there's my decimal. I can bring that over here and put that 0.75 into my decimal form. And I can go ahead and tell you the word form. That is 75. And there are 2 decimal places, that's hundredths. Now it's not 7,500, it's hundredths. And I cannot say that word. I can't pronounce it. I'm sorry. But you want to make sure when you write these decimals that they end in TH. And I know it's hundredths because it's 2 places after the decimal. Okay. Now, to get your percent, you just need to move that decimal 2 places. So moving it 2 places, you get 75%. So here you have found all 3 forms of 3/4. It's good practice. Okay, let's look at this next one, which is 125 over 100. So remember, I'm taking the bottom number into the top number. Can 100 go into 125? Yes, it goes 1 time. Now there will be 25 left when I subtract, but that's okay. So I add my decimal. Let me zoom in here so you can see what I'm doing. And I add it up here, and I add 1 0 and bring it down. Now don't go hog wild with those zeros. Just add 1 at a time. 100 into 250 is 2 times, because 2 times 100 is 200. So we will have 50 left over. So let's add another 0 and keep it lined up. Bring it down. If you are learning or your children are learning long division, I recommend graph paper. It helps you keep these problems nice and straight, and that's so important. Okay, 100 into 500 is 5 times, and that would be none left over. So I'm going to draw my 2 lines to indicate that it's terminating, which I always like to see. And there's my decimal. So I'll bring that 1.25 into this column, and let's write our word form. 1, the decimal point is the word and. 25, do you know the places? There are only 2 of them, so that would have to be hundredths. Not hundred, hundredths. Hundredths. Okay. And now that you have that decimal, you can move it 2 places to the left to get, to the right to get 125%. And that makes sense. You think that's more than 100%, and that's right, because if you look at the fraction's top heavy. So that will always be more than 100%. Okay, let's divide 4/10. And I'm going to bring him right down here. We're going to say 10 divided into 4. So ask yourself, can 10 go into 4? It cannot. So we're going to put a 0. Can 10 go into 40? It sure can. So 4 times 10 is 40, and we have none left. So the decimal for this line is 0.4. That's going to sit right here. And to write this one, you would say 4. It's 1 place, so that's tenths. Hundredths is 2 places. So tenths is just 1 decimal place. Okay. Then to get your percent, remember you have to move it 2 places to the right. So that's going to be 40%. You have to add what I call a ghost 0 there to make that second place. Okay, this one's interesting. 8/8. So when you divide 8 into itself, you say, can 8 go into 8? Yes, it does. It goes 1 time, and 1 times 8 is 8. So there is none left. So my decimal is 1. This is 1. It's 1 whole. And to get your percent, you add your decimal and you move it 2 places to the right. So that 8/8 is 100%. It's 1 whole. So that one's a little tricky. That one gives some folks some trouble because it's sort of, in a way, it's the easiest one here, but in a way it isn't. So it's tricky. All right, 7/35. So let's divide 35 into 7. And you ask yourself, can that happen? And no, it cannot. So let's add a 0. 35 into 70. Well, I know that 35 times 1 is 35. 35 times 2 is, oh boy, is 70. So it goes 2 times. and it is 70 on the dot, so there is no remainder to deal with. We don't have to keep going. So my decimal is 0.2. So let's bring that back up here and put it in this slot. And that's 2/10. That's one place. So it's tenths. To get your percentage, you just move that decimal and add your ghost. So 20%. Okay, on this last one, we have 100 divided into 20. And so you ask yourself, can that go? And it does not. So I'm going to add a 0. Sorry. 100 into 200 is twice. So this is a 0.2, which means it's equivalent to the one above it. These two could form a proportion. I'll show you that in just a second. I didn't plan this, but it's a good thing to show you. So 0.2, again, that's 2/10. To get your percent, you add a ghost because you got to move it 2 places, and that's 20%. So I believe that these two ratios could form a proportion because this is all the same. But let's check it out. This is a good time to review that proportion. So let's say 7/35 and 20/100. And so let's see if this is a true proportion. So I don't really have room to draw the peanut. Let me do it this way. I'm going to say this one times this one, and this one times this one. So 7 times 100, I can do that in my head. And then 35 times 20, you can do that one in your head maybe. Sure enough, those two are a proportion. They're equal. Purpose of this was just to give you some practice with changing these different forms, because more than the high school equivalency test, this could show up on employment tests. So I want you to know how to do that, or for those of you who are interested in a career in the medical field, you will need to know it as well. So I will see you in the next video, and we'll learn how to solve percent problems. So it's one of the most practical things in all of math, and I think that it's something you'll really be glad to know how to do if you don't know already. So I'll see you in the next video very soon.